30th birthday, you know, we're going out on the road, you know, and I'm bumping into some musician friends, and they'd all heard that I just turned 30, which is like, you know, the strange age, you know, the threshold, you know. And so they said, hey man, you know, we heard you just turned 30. What did you do on your birthday? So I told them the story I just told you. I mean, in the hotel room, heard this voice, you know, and I tell them this story, and they would look at me and they say, yeah, wow, that's great, man, far out, man. What were you smoking, and where can we get some? And I say, no, you don't understand. I really heard a voice, you know. I try to convince them, you know, and that was all. That was the only response I could get. Oh, really? Great. Who's the dealer? You know, and no, you don't understand. But and the thing was, I couldn't shake that voice. I couldn't just like dismiss it and forget it. It stayed with me, you know, and it stayed with me for a long time, like 2.5 years or something, you know, and during that process of time, everything in my life that basically could go wrong went wrong. I mean, divorce, bankruptcy, the whole 9 yards. It was like I could no longer control my life. You know, up until that point, I'd had a very successful music career, studio work, producers calling me up and this, that, and the other. And it was like after I'd heard that word, when I went home at the end of the tour, it all collapsed, you know. And I still had this, I could not shake this voice. And during that period of time, I met a guy, a dear friend of mine, his name's Chester Thompson. And he's actually Phil Collins' drummer, played with Genesis and everything. So we hooked up and put a little band together. We were doing some stuff together. And we had this period of time where we would rehearse at his studio in his house, and at the end of the day his wife would cook us this great meal. We joke about it to this day about the anointed African stew. And so we'd eat this great meal at the end of the day, and she'd be sat right next to me, Chester would be across the table, and as soon as I put my knife and fork down, she would turn to me and say, well, Caleb, why don't you go ahead and just tell us just exactly what do you believe? And so I would just go off into like this, you know, 40-minute monologue of rubbish, you know, of stuff that, trying to explain all the things that I profess to believe in, you know, a bit of Star Trek, a bit of Indian Guru, a bit of this, that, and the other, you know, go all around the houses, you know. And at the end of it, my friend Chester would just look at me and he would say, yeah, man, I know what you mean. You just need Jesus. That's all he would say. They didn't open the Bible, didn't preach, that was all he would say. And every time he said that, it was like, I got really upset. You know, I didn't say anything to him, but inside I was like boiling mad because I couldn't figure out how it took me about 40 minutes to try and explain myself, my professed spirituality, and he could just keep boiling it down to one name. You know, and then I would have to go home, and I knew he was going to get a good night's sleep, and I wasn't. I'm laying on the bed, my eyeballs are wide open, and all I hear is his words, yeah, you just need Jesus, rattling around inside me like a ball bearing in a tin can, you know. And because I knew, deep down inside, I knew that all the things that I had told them that I professed to believe in, none of those things could fix my internal condition. You know, my issues, you know, drug addiction, the whole 9 yards. None of those things could fix any of that, you know. And so as time went on, you know, I got to Easter Day in 1982, and he calls me up on Easter morning and says, you know, what are you doing today? And I said, oh, nothing much. He says, why don't you come to church today? It's Easter. And I'm on the phone like this, and I thought, you know what? I've tried everything else. Why not church? So I told him, I said, okay, I'll come to church with you. You know, and so he was excited. We'll come around and pick you up, you know. So him and his wife came and picked me up, took me to church. And it was during the service when they're doing the worship and singing the songs, and I didn't know none of this. They're singing now what they call contemporary choruses. My last church experience was years ago singing old hymns, you know, so I knew none of what they were singing. But they started to sing this very simple song called In My Life, Lord, Be Glorified Today. Just kept singing it over and over again, very simple tune. And it was during that tune when I had this amazing encounter again, because the same voice that I'd heard in the hotel room that I could not shake now speaks to me in the church there during this worship time and says, Caleb, it's time for you to come home to me today because I have a new life for you. And it was like a bomb went off inside of me. It was like, oh my goodness, you know, I suddenly connected the dots. That's that same voice I heard in the hotel. Now I'm in church, these people are singing to Jesus. Feels like Jesus is in the room. He knows exactly where I'm sitting. He's got my number. Game's up, you know. So that's when I said yes to Jesus, you know. And at that time, I'd been an 18-year drug addict. And people often ask me, well, how did you get off the drugs, you know? So it was about a month later, on the day of Pentecost Sunday that they celebrate in the church, is when I got baptized in water. And when the moment I got baptized in water, I got completely set free from all those years of drugs. Brand new life, you know.